Did you find it difficult, John, to champion punk? Because in a way, you represented what punk was attacking.
Yes, but the funny thing was that a lot of the people who were involved with it on a kind of entrepreneurial level were the same. I mean, we were all like clapped out old hippies, you know. But the people who started Rough Trade and a lot of people who were managing the bands and so on were of approximately the same age and same era as myself. And for me, I got the same kind of feeling when I first heard the Ramones LP, because I used to have an arrangement with Virgin Records in Marble Arch where the manager there would let me take records out, as it were, on approval, and I'd take them back and listen to them, and then the ones I didn't want I could return to him. And I got the Ramones LP and I took it down to the studio and I had the same feeling genuinely when I first heard that as I did when I first heard Little Richard. And it was a kind of a mixture of excitement and yet at the same time fearful, because you realised that everything that you'd held dear up until then was about to be overturned, you know. And I played, I think, I changed that night's programme and put in like 4 or 5 tracks from the LP. And immediately there's like a torrent of abusive mail came in. I always say abusive mail means a lot, you know. I pay more attention to that than I do sort of like kindly letters, because they're all from people saying, look, don't play any more of this. Please, we want to hear the Grateful Dead for the rest of our lives until we die ourselves. And this made me even more excited, you know, and it was like there was an element of danger, you know, and I'd forgotten danger. And it's, I like those records where you're not quite sure if it's any good or not yourself, you know.
You're not a typical Radio 1 disc jockey, are you?
Well, no, so you're trying to prod me into tricky into like waltzing through the minefield here. I mean, I have a different reason for being a disc jockey, perhaps, to other disc jockeys, and I'm not saying that they're wrong and that I'm right, but I mean my interest is principally in the records, and I like doing radio programmes. In a sense, I mean I often feel that what I do is closer to the Reithian tradition. I mean obviously if Lord Reith wasn't already dead he would die if he heard one of my programmes, but I mean the actual philosophy behind them, whatever it may be, and don't ask me what it is because I couldn't really articulate it, but I always feel that it's closer to the Reithian tradition than a lot of stuff which goes on, not just on Radio 1, but on radios 2 and 4 as well.
Who do you talk to then about music? I mean, are there any other 45-year-olds who share your taste in music?
This is why, as I grow older, I've become more embittered. I mean, there aren't, really. See, most of the people my age, most of the people that I was at school with are now sort of like dentists in Devon and stuff like this, or Lords Lieutenant of counties and stuff. So there really isn't anybody. I mean, you see, even my producer, Walters, he's a concepts man, and he likes the idea of things, you know, and can express himself wonderfully and at great length on these things, but he doesn't want to actually have to listen to the records, you know. That's my function, is to listen to the records. And
so who do you talk to?
Nobody.
I wonder if you've got any regrets about the way performers you have championed have sort of turned out. Rod Stewart is a pretty good example.
You see, I don't blame him really. I blame the nature of the record industry. Rod was a really good, he came to our wedding, you know, he's like a good mate, you know, and the tightest man I've ever met in my life, incidentally. If you weren't drinking with him, he'd never buy a round of drinks, and every time he got a drink, he'd be like, I'll have a Scotch egg as well. Well, that's by the by. But, and it happens very suddenly. This is what the interesting thing, and the same thing happened with Mark Bolan, who was like another really good friend, and I suppose it's one of the reasons why I now don't have any friends in bands at all, except people who are in bands that are so obscure and so patently unlikely to be popular successes that it doesn't matter.
Do you ever feel that, you know, you're getting to that stage where you might pack it in?
Well, yeah, this is something that my wife talks about this a lot, and obviously the time will come. I mean, you see, the thing is that there may be some like major upheaval, like punk may come along, that I don't like, and at that stage I couldn't fake it, there's no question about that. So at that stage I'd have to say, well, that's it, you know, from now on I'm a museum and my period is 1948 to 19 whatever it happens to be. And but at the moment, I mean, what I like the idea of is the idea of becoming as I say, as I drift, I'm already there, into like an unattractive middle age. I like the idea of being like a Peter Clayton or a Humphrey Lyttelton or other broadcasters who do stuff that I like, you know, where they just reflect a particular era. I actually don't know what it is about a record that makes it a great record. And yet, I mean, a really great record, and this is again going to sound hopelessly stupid, but a really good record will move me to tears. Now, as I say, the Cocteau Twins are particular favourites of mine. When I first played the new single, currently in the charts, on the radio, and if anybody was listening that night, they'll know that it was true. After it had finished playing, I actually had to whack myself in the chest to stop myself crying, because it had affected me that much. And it was the same when I heard, like, my favourite record of all time. Because I always hate people who say, well, of course, my favourite record of all time. It's like my favourite number between 7 and 12. You know, but it's obviously a terribly stupid thing to say, but my favourite record of all time is The Undertones' Teenage Kicks. And I was driving up to a match at Liverpool when I heard Peter Powell play that on the radio. And actually I had to pull over to the side of the road. I just burst into floods of tears. And when I can no longer be affected by records like that in a totally irrational way, because I don't think you should be able to explain it. When that happens, that'll be time for me to knock it on the head.